Hi, welcome back to the channel. Today I sit down with Scott and we do some pre-flight planning for a trip into Mammoth Mountain Airport. We'll discuss many things such as weight and balance, high density altitude, high elevation takeoff and landings, fuel requirements, and a couple of the different routes that you could choose to fly into Mammoth Mountain and some of the procedures associated with them. All right, let's get into it.
So first, before you make any kind of cross-country flight, I would first just call the FBO for two reasons, actually a multitude of reasons. But the first one is figure out how many gallons you need to take to waive the ramp fee, because a lot of times that ramp fee is going to weigh more or cost more than just taking on that fuel. So at Mammoth, for instance, at Hot Creek, I'm actually wearing the sweatshirt right now, look at that. I think it's for 15 gallons. If you take 15 gallons for a 172 or 182, it waives the ramp fee. So it works out, it's actually more affordable just to take the 15 gallons and pay the, I don't know, for
$70 or whatever.
super expensive ramp fee or whatever it is. So then you can kind of reverse engineer your fuel to understand from that point, we realize how much fuel do we need to land at Mammoth and take 15 gallons to make it back home with an hour in reserve. You know me, I don't like landing with more or less than an hour in reserve.
Right.
You can like the 30-minute rule or the 45-minute rule. I like to have an hour.
Yeah.
Fuel is everything, right? So it works out really good for the 182 here because you figure it takes 2 hours and some change to get up there. Okay, you're burning about 30 to 40 gallons. So what I'll do is I'll take off out of Montgomery with about 60, 65 gallons. I'll land at Mammoth with about 30, 35 gallons. Take 15 gallons there. We have about 45 gallons, maybe 50. Math is kind of, and then it takes you another 30, 35 getting home. Well, that gives you about 15 gallons in reserve when you land. That works out to be about an hour. So it works out pretty good with the Mammoth route. Got that one kind of dialed. But my point is call the FBO, understand what the ramp fee is, when you can waive that fee. And the second thing you're verifying is if their fuel pumps even work.
Oh, yeah.
And you might laugh, but I did have a guy who flew into, I think, Camarillo one time, and the fuel pumps didn't work. And he was banking on that for fuel, so yeah, that's the second thing you're just verifying is the fuel.
Okay.
Yep. And then from then we go into the weight and balance. So you look at the useful load, of course, you do your weight and balance and stuff. And, we have this forward and aft CG thing in front of you. As you know, there's pros and cons to either. I'm not really sure which one you want to use for the most part. It depends on the regime of flight you're going into. Obviously, we know aft fuel is going to, or aft CG is going to give you better long range cruise and all that stuff, less stability. Forward CG, better stability, worse fuel burn. I tend to like to be right in the middle, but honestly, the reality of it is when you're flying a 182, you're probably putting a lot of stuff in the back because there's a lot of stuff you can put in the back there. You're probably going to end up being a little more aft CG on that spectrum, which is good for fuel, but just be more cognizant about your stalls and stuff.
Gotcha.
So yeah, the other thing about weight and balance is, the departure is one thing out of sea level. The thing you really got to be thinking about when you're going to high elevation places is that density altitude. So, you can call it a power margin. I call it a weight margin, really, right? So coming out of Mammoth, I usually like to be, and I'm just throwing this number out there, usually about 100, 200 pounds even less than useful load, because that gives you a little bit of a power margin. So those are just some initial things to think about. And now that I have in front of me, you have the takeoff distance here. So with the 182, like from our early on private pilot training, what I like to do, these charts, if you keep scrolling, it's going to go to the 2400, and then it goes all the way down to 2200. It goes to the lowest possible weight. Well, I like to be conservative by looking at the maximum numbers. So let's go to the useful load, or the maximum useful load line, and then let's look at the worst case scenario. The worst, so high, hot, heavy, and humid. So we're really heavy. Let's look at the 40 degrees Celsius. It's really hot out, and we're going to the highest possible elevation. Well, 8,000 doesn't even have anything for that. So let's go to the 6K line. Well, the ground roll, even still for, it's really hot out.
Yeah.
We're at max weight, still about 1,500 feet of ground roll required. So that sounds all great and dandy, but what I will tell you from experience is that's with a brand new light Continental engine, right? So just factor that in your consideration. What the POH is telling you is for more or less, a brand new engine firing on all cylinders, literally speaking here. So, you can even add another safety margin to that. Give yourself a 10, 15% cushion to that. Well, I'm going to take that number and add another 10, 15%. That's how much I can expect to reasonably need for my takeoff. But in reality, let's go to what we're really expecting. Probably be a 10C kind of day, going up to a pressure altitude of about 7K. You go down to here, about 1,300 feet of runway required.
Gotcha. I think that airport, it's right at 7,000.
Yep, 7,000, some change. In reality, I can tell you.
If it was a high DA day, still 15 or 3,000 feet or something?
That's for total clear 50-foot obstacle.
Oh, okay.
So that's like your that's essentially to attain V2 and climb out,
Gotcha.
which on single engine doesn't apply. But in any case, you look at really the ground roll right here. That's the line you're looking at.
And we have like 7,000 feet, I think.
Yeah, it's about a 7,000 foot runway. So here's the next thing to think about. So first of all, I can tell you right now, even in the winter, this POH is lying to you.
Oh, yeah.
You're not getting off the ground at 1,500 feet.
Yeah, that seems pretty short.
You might be able to. I'm not saying it's completely lying, but I'm also saying, 1,500 feet is probably not what it's going to take. It's probably more about 2,800 feet or so.
Okay.
And also that being said, pay attention, give yourself a go-no criteria when you do these high altitude takeoffs.
If you're not off by like a third of the runway or something.
Yeah. A lot of guys, what they'll do is they'll get in the takeoff chart. Part 91 says you have to, which is great. You should be getting in here and figure out how much runway you need. But you're not really done there, because what a lot of guys will do is they'll take this as gospel. They'll hop in the plane, and then they get down to about halfway through the runway, and they're dumbfounded. Like, I should have gotten off by now. I should have been able to rotate, but I can't. Now they're going through a panic. They have the startle response, and all of a sudden they take the takeoff and the thing stalls, bad things happen. Or they abort the takeoff too late, bad things happen, right? So it's important to give yourself a go-no-go criteria. So for me, for Mammoth, at least in a light single engine, I would say if you're not, off the ground by about the 4,000 foot marker, then you should consider just aborting the takeoff. So giving yourself that pre-planned response is going to save you a world of hurt. And the other thing you can do is have your guy in the right seat. I don't care if he's a rated pilot or not. It's very easy to have him just look out the door and see the runway remaining marks. Be like, okay, I see a 1. Okay, I see a 2. I see a 3. Have him look at or I guess in this case, a 7, 6, 5, 4. Just tell him have him read the number off as you're going down. That'll give you a warm and fuzzy. And so, that's how I do the takeoffs. What else did you want to look at?
So pretty much like I guess the next thing I was worried about is like the climb gradient. I know that airport's pretty flat, especially if we're taking off to the east. It's like there's really doesn't seem like too many obstacles in the way. But if for whatever reason, still it'd probably be good to make sure we can climb at the climb gradient. I'm sure in this plane we can.
Yeah.
But I figured.
So remember, this is predicated primarily for twin engine airplanes.
Oh, okay.
Well, not necessarily. It's single engine also, but this kind of stuff is when you're following. Sorry, let me rewind here. This stuff is predicated for if you're flying IFR, right? You're doing the nickel 2 departure IFR. Then obviously you have to meet this stuff. Now, where the gotcha is for single engine, you're checking this. For dual engine, it's all great and dandy that you can make that with dual engine, but the thing you have to reassure yourself is, can you make this climb gradient
within
single
that
engine?
ground speed? Oh, okay.
Single engine.
Oh,
Yeah.
I see it. The single engine.
Yep. You still have to make these climb gradients with single engine.
Wow. Yeah, that'll definitely catch a lot of planes.
And if you go into, that's why you go into the performance charts, and there's a chart that single engine climb performance. You have to make sure that it'll actually capture this. If you don't and you lose an engine, well, not only you're violating the regs, but also like these are formulated based off of TERPS data, so it stands for something. But basically based on the terrain that's around there. Like if you don't meet that gradient, like
you're running into something.
You're going into something.
So that's kind of the one question I wanted to ask you about. So I know to pretty much calculate it, if you can make the climb gradient in feet per minute, per your actual VSI in the airplane, you divide this by ground speed. But so if we're climbing, let's say like 70 knots, is there a calculation you use to basically turn that into ground speed, or do you have to like just
There is a fancy calculation, and I would be a little bit shooting from the ass. Yeah, there's a divide by ground speed.
Do you just kind of ballpark it by your
I don't even ballpark. I go into the chart
and
I look at what the single engine climb performance is, This is if I'm a multi-engine. If I'm a single engine, I'll look at the charts and
would
stuff.
be this one over rate of climb.
Yep.
From 8,000 or so. So 70. So would you just treat that as the ground speed number?
Yeah.
Okay.
In a zero wind condition, you would do that. Now, if you have a headwind, that's actually helping you.
Right. The ground speed would be even slower, so you have longer to climb. So.
Yeah, and that's why you just use a zero wind condition, and
Okay.
then you can calculate that to make sure you're meeting that. Again, it's very rare that you would actually even fly this departure because a lot of planes don't even go into Mammoth.
Right.
But the reason I say it's rare you would fly this too is because a lot of times what guys will do is they'll take off VFR and they'll get their clearance in the air, and then they'll pick up and continue the departure. The only time you're really going to get this is if you call LA Center and you get the clearance to take off.
Gotcha.
And then you ask for this specific DP. That's the only time you're probably really going to fly this departure. But most of the time you're taking off, say, runway 27, you're getting up into the air, you pick up your clearance, which, by the way, has to be within 50 nautical miles. You pick up your clearance in the air, and then you go to your first fix, call it this one here.
Yeah.
And the reason that's also important is because a lot of times for these kind of airports like Mammoth, like if it's actual IMC there and you're actually having to use this, you might even question taking off altogether.
Oh, yeah.
Because you know how Mammoth can get.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not just Mammoth. That's like Aspen and stuff. Aspen, you can pick up a clearance on the ground, I think, to my knowledge. But even then, like, it's like if we're taking off and we really actually
do you
need
really
this
want to be
DP,
taking off right
like,
now?
it's like, yeah. So things to think about.
Gotcha. Yeah, no more so I was just wanting to make sure that like we're not too heavy to take off. We have enough runway. Like so that's why I was trying to pull data off of these.
Yeah. So the thing to think about with Mammoth too, if you go over the chart here, what I like to use there's been actually numerous incidences where guys will take off out of Mammoth here, runway 27, and they're trying to do the west route here, and they make the turn early. They're only stay like at like 10,000 feet, and they make the turn early here to find that, oh, hey, there's still rising terrain in front of me.
Right.
There's actually been a guy that's planted it in.
Yeah, the ski trails are on this side, right?
Yeah, that's right over here.
Oh, okay, so normally is the hangars, they're over here. So normally we take off runway 9. The last few times.
It really, it depends.
But
I'm saying
this
worst
way would be
case
way
is
more dangerous going west because
It's
those
also-
mountains are like right across the road.
Yeah. But here's the thing. So if I'm taking the west route home, and this is all kind of rewinding back to say,
You'll do the westbound departure.
yeah, but usually if I'm going the west route home or the west route inbound, it's because the winds are coming anywhere out of the northeast from the southeast.
Gotcha.
Because you're getting those winds
Blowing
coming
it
up over
down
the
the
pass.
mountains, I'm guessing. And that
Well,
gives
yeah.
you a headwind.
If the winds are coming anywhere from the west and you're on the east side of the mountains, you're going to get trapped in some gnarly mountain wave turbulence,
Yeah,
which
that makes sense.
we might have talked about this before, but I'll go on windy and I look at the winds aloft, and if they're anything above 20 to 25 knots along these passes here.
We'll switch to the west route.
Yeah, and that's just because like you got to think about winds as like water going down a river. When it comes up over a rock, if it's slow water, it adheres to the rock surface. If it's fast water, well, if you look on the leeward side of that rock, you see some turbulence in there. Well, that's exactly what's happening on the east side here.
You're right.
When the winds are above about 25 knots, is you get these rotor waves on the backside.
So that wind data, we'll probably have to get that like the day before the trip,
Well,
right?
I'm going to shout out to Windy here. Windy, you can look at all that stuff out to about 7 days. Beyond that, you have to get the premium. But so I've already looked at Windy. I sent you a screenshot earlier. Right. So it looks like the winds are coming out of the southwest, which is great.
Windy. I got windy under somewhere. Oh, it's right in front.
Yep.
There you go. It should be premium. So.
And they're coming out of the southwest, and I think it even lets you pre-program up to 10,000 feet. So like, let's go over to. Oh, it looks like you have the premium version. That's cool. And I know that because you can go out there like 10 days. So let's go out to 7 a.m. That's departure time, whatever. And you go here, you go to, let's call it 10,000 feet. That's where most of the peaks are along the Sierras. And you got Mount Whitney, which is, there we go. And as you can see, they're out of the southwest. The other thing you can look at is look at the value. So it's cool that they're coming from the south because we know we have a tailwind now.
Yeah, that'll be nice.
But let's look at the value because actually it is a direct south.
Tuesday. What time did you want?
No, that was Monday.
Oh, wait, 26.
Yeah. So 7 a.m. So you look at it, it's like, okay, 10 knots. Even if it was coming out of the west at 10 knots, I'm not too concerned about mountain wave turbulence. If I saw it was coming out of the west and it was 25, 30 knots, and I'm looking at, the wind's right over here where the crosshair is, that's when I'm starting to think, okay, maybe I want to take the west route. But the west route has its own risks. So this is where you have to weigh in the cost benefit of the west route versus the east route. If I go the east route and the winds are 25 knots out of the west, but I'm gonna get rocked around like a laundry machine on the east side, and it might be the point where like I don't want to continue the flight because it just doesn't feel safe because the turbulence is so bad. Well, that's when the west route comes into play. But the west route has its own risks because
not as many places to land.
yeah, inevitably so. You got to make a Sierra hop. But the way you mitigate that, as you know, or the way I mitigate that is, the good thing about the Sierra is there's a shit ton of lakes as you're coming up here, and I just be sure that in my flight route I'm flying over all these different lakes in case bad things happen. Yep, and it's all within glide range too. Like you connect all these lakes. If something were to happen, at least you have a lake to put it down on instead of a bunch of tall pine trees. So that's kind of the route choosing as far as like winds. So winds play a key thing when it comes to Mammoth. I mean, it's a very windy mountain. Are we talking about weather now, or what are we?
Sure, weather's good. I mean,
yeah.
Whatever comes to your mind for like if you're planning this.
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, I start big to small. We already talked about fuel, so I won't beat that dead horse.
Okay.
The other thing is weather. So like the very first thing I do is I go on Weather Outlook. Start big to small. Look at your standard civilian Weather Outlook app and start looking at weather from there. If you start seeing rain and snow from there, you don't need to be going into an aviation app to tell you that the weather's not great. Like it's probably going to be, there's probably a storm or something moving through. If you see that though it's like more marginal, something like clouds or something like that, that's when you might start going into a prog chart, like a prognostic chart, which there's a way to pull it up here on ForeFlight, but I go to aviationweather.gov. And that's where, it really pays to have your weather knowledge. I'll go in there and I'll start looking at, what kind of a storm is it? Fast moving cold front? Is it an occluded front rolling through? Is it a stationary front causing a bunch of fog? There we go. So, So you'll go out to Tuesday. This is about our Zulu time. And lo and behold, no surprise here, it's a bunch of high pressure dominating the Four Corners region and out here. So generally speaking, good weather, right? A bunch of high pressure everywhere.
Right.
But you have this little guy coming over here. You have this occluded front here and then a cold front. So after looking at our big picture weather, I'll get into something like this, and I'm going to look at, okay, this is zero threat, all this high pressure stuff, that's good weather. But what about all this stuff? So then I'll just kind of see, okay, which way is the storm moving? And you can follow these contour lines and stuff, zoom out a little bit. There's the center of the low pressure. Just like I taught you early on in private pilot training, this time of year, you see a lot of occluded fronts up in Alaska, and it looks like it's just hanging out there. So the chance of it actually impacting, the West Coast, pretty low. Unfortunate for us skiers, fortunate for fair weather flyers. So all that to be said, get on a prognostic chart, look at all these weather systems, look which way they're moving, look at how that timing might impact your flight. So you start from big weather to a prognostic chart, which is still big scale, but it's still giving you more weatherman/scientific look at the weather. Cool. And then after that, then what I do, usually about 24 hours prior, then I'm starting to get into TAFs and stuff because, those things are updated every 4 hours, every 4 times throughout the day. You start getting into those, and then you start getting into the nitty gritty and stuff. For our specific flight, it's going to be CAVU. It's going to be mostly good. But, if it's something where it's marginal and stuff, then you might have to start looking at, okay, where along our route is the weather most impacting these sites, and is there a way around it? Is there an altitude around it? If I get on top of it, am I going to be able to get back down? That kind of stuff. Can I deviate around it laterally? Can I deviate around it vertically? If I do deviate around it vertically, can I get back down? If I deviate around it laterally, do I have enough fuel to do all that? So those are the kind of things you have to think about when it comes to, especially this time of year, clouds and all that stuff. Because, you can pick up IFR, but it turns out airplanes don't fly very good when they're an ice cube.
Right.
So icing always has a vote. So that's the weather, that's the fuel aspect. We talked a little bit about weight and balance.
I guess speaking of like picking up IFR, are we planning to fly there like with flight following, without flight following?
Yeah, good question.
Like the LA area is always difficult to navigate.
Let's go. So I have nothing wrong with flight following. They're your friend in the sky. That's what they're there for. They're there to provide you the service of if something goes wrong, you have a friend in the sky, they're clearing traffic in front of you, numerous things flight following is going to do for you. However, it starts impacting you a little bit, let's just say, if you're flying in the SoCal basin. I've flown all over the continental US, and I can say that when I come back into SoCal, the radios are exponentially louder, like just tons of talking. So, and for good reason. There's tons. I mean, there's 3 major airports right here where aircraft. I mean, there's an arrival pattern with the big jets coming right along here, and so it just gets really busy. Then you have a ton of general aviation going on here. It's just super busy. So it's great to have flight following. However, what I've noticed in my first few years of experience flying general aviation, doing flight following going to the north, is if you're flying over the LA basin, somewhere right along here, just south of John Wayne, they're going to start vectoring you all over the place. Hey, turn right, heading 020. Okay, now you're going over here. Hey, turn left, heading 280. Okay, now we're going back over here. Hey, turn right, back again for 040, delay vectors for incoming traffic. You're getting pinballed all in and out the basin.
Yeah.
As soon as you know it, your fuel's starting to bleed down. Your timing's no longer working. But worse, your fuel. Now you're like, well, shoot, now I don't even know if, like, we're going to land here right with, the minimum amount of fuel I really need. So the way I preclude all of that is, like I said, I'll do a long-range cruise climb coming out of here, and I'll get up to, by the time, and this is a ballpark number, but by the time I get to just south of John Wayne, I usually like to be somewhere around, 7.5, 8.5, and our goal is to climb up to 10.5 to clear all this Bravo, clear all the Charlies, all that stuff.
Gotcha.
Get up to about 10.5, clear the Bravo. You don't have to talk to anyone. It's great. You're out of the Bravo. You clear everyone. Now, that being said, is if the winds are getting stronger aloft, more headwind, let's say, it's a headwind kind of day, and as you go up in altitude, generally, they get stronger. Well, then it might not be favorable to go up higher. So then what I might be doing, there's a waypoint called Fexiv. Where is it? I'm going to drag and drop this. It's probably going to find it. I know it's in there somewhere. Fexiv, there it is. You go insert into route. If I know the winds aloft are getting stronger and more of a headwind, then I'll put in Fexiv into the flight plan. And then what I'll do is I'll fly at this point at 6.5. You're going to clear the Charlie here at 6.5. You're going to be just below the Bravo at 6.5. And then once you clear the Bravo,
nice.
Pop it up to 8.5, 10.5, climb back over the terrain. Yep.
Nice.
Yep. But that's one way to, granted, then you're going to start battling the headwinds out here. But at least you can buy yourself a little bit of time by not getting into that dirty headwind here in the SoCal basin.
Right.
So those are all ways to kind of mitigate the Bravo shelf here. Either you stay low at 6.5 or you get above it at 10.5.
Gotcha.
But flight following in this region, unless you're unfamiliar with the area, it's nighttime, it's whatever, you may not use it.
Yeah.
It's really up to the captain. It's up to you.
Cool.
That's kind of the route. We'll talk about the west route a little bit. So let me pull that up here. Boom, there it is. So we spoke about the hazards and risks with the west route. So you use the west route, or I use the west route predominantly when the winds are coming anywhere out of the west. And if I go on the east side,
Which they usually are.
yeah, they usually are, especially this time of year, right?
Yeah.
We get all the winds from the northeast. You're flying in it. The only time I've really picked up severe turbulence was when
In the east.
Yep,
Yeah,
flying the east
valley.
route. Winds were above 25 knots. It had a forecast for moderate turbulence, but I'm like, whatever. By the way, good for you to know, the TAFs will only forecast up to moderate turbulence. The FAA will not forecast anything beyond moderate turbulence. The only one who's going to let people know that it's beyond moderate turbulence is
Pilots.
the guy giving the PIREP.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, you're getting thrown around. So just know that they only forecast up to moderate turbulence.
Interesting. Did not know that.
Yep, I learned that the hard way.
I bet.
So, and sometimes it's clear as day. You see the winds coming out of here. They forecast moderate turbulence in this area. Just know that it's probably higher than that. And so now you're thinking, okay, west route. So we'll get into the west route. Getting over to SoCal, we already talked about. Once you come kind of along the mountain range here, the other reason we like the west route is because think of the mountains as kind of a ramp. When you have the winds coming from the west, you got that nice upflowing air right here. Upflowing air is better than downflowing air.
Oh, yeah.
So you're flying along the west route here. And you'll notice these waypoints, they're factoring in a bunch of lakes like we talked about. So everywhere along this route, ForeFlight has this handy dandy little glide ring thing on it tells you how far you can glide. Well, it turns out if you're, right at this point, I've been at 10.5 this entire time. Somewhere right around here, I'm going to bump it up to 12.5 to give myself a little bit of glide range. You'll notice that your turquoise ring gets bigger, and at any given point, you're still able to glide to any of these lakes, which is kind of the important part. So you get over this lake right here, you can glide, or somewhere in between here and here at 12.5, you can still glide to this lake.
Gotcha.
In between this lake and this lake, well, you have this one, but you can still glide down to either this one or this one. And then coming up over the Mammoth Crest right here, you still have numerous lakes you can glide to at 12.5. You can do 14.5, just pay attention to that 30-minute rule.
Right.
Make sure you have that supplemental oxygen, whatever, on board. So that's kind of how you do the west route. At night, I don't recommend the west route unless you have, your terrain display on. Night flying in the mountains, I always have the, granted, there's not a lot of people flying out here, so
Right.
you'll have your terrain display up. And, I think the yellow, once you get, if you see yellow on the
Yeah.
chart, that means they think you have 1,000 feet.
1,000 feet?
Might be at 2,000. And I think user preferences, you can change that, but 1,000 feet is really the minimum you want to set for the yellow.
Yeah.
And I think red gives you about 200 feet. You're not very smart if you're going into the red ring and from the get-go, but flying at night, I have that terrain diagram up on, you hit the nav page and you
Right.
do a few clicks to the right, that'll bring up the terrain page. And I have flown the west route at night. It's just that, I fly the route a lot. I bring up the terrain page. Really flying the mountains at night, you don't want to do that if it's your first time flying there. Shouldn't even really have to say that, but at least have flown the route during the day once or twice before you go flying it at night.
Gotcha.
Even for the east route, for the east route, what I'll say, it's a lot more safe at night than the west route. I'll go to the east route. Do you know where that is?
Might be that one. Let's see.
Cool.
Yeah.
So there's the east route. The cool thing about the east route is once you hit Inuokern, somewhere right around here, granted, during the day, what I'll do is I'll cut the pie. So I get the KWJF here. I'll do a more or less a direct to Lone Pine here. But that's because I can cut the pie and I can actually see the terrain below me.
Right.
So I'm not worried about hitting it. That's during the day, though. During the night, I'll actually fly these waypoints to a T. The other thing that's going to let me know that I'm on track and I'm safe is, you're going to see car lights on the 395.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to fly over the 395. You're going to see car lights below you. If you start deviating to the left, be careful. But again, during this entire time, I still have the terrain page up.
Right.
But the east route is pretty benign because if anything were to happen, you have a giant runway below you called the 395 the entire time. So east route, plenty of diverts, plenty of good places to go. Lone Pine, let's see. Inuokern has fuel. Lone Pine, I don't think it has. I've diverted there before. It says it does have fuel. You see the crosshairs there.
Right.
I don't know. It might have fuel, but again, wouldn't rely on it. Independence does not.
Definitely doesn't.
But as you can see, like Bishop does, there's a lot of good diverts in this area. East route, the one thing I'll say is like once you clear out of Bishop, you may or may not want to climb. For some reason in this whole area right here on Mammoth, kind of like where I have the page zoomed in on, this whole area can get kind of windy. So once you come out of the Bishop area, just be prepared for that turbulence. Yep.
Yeah.
And that's another thing too, is setting yourself up for the pattern for Mammoth coming in here.
Oh, yeah.
What you can do, which is kind of fun coming from the east, is you can set up the RNAV coming in here. You just ride the RNAV into Mammoth coming from the east. From the west, what I'll do is, you're up at 12.5, sometimes 14.5. You have plenty of altitude to lose. There shouldn't be any kind of rush to get down. And the reason I say that is because the faster you get down, the quicker you're going to get into that dirty air spilling over the mountains.
Right.
And you really don't need to. The reason I say that, and that's because I used to do that, and I came to find I really don't need to do that. And the reason I say that is because you're coming from usually this direction. You can more or less fly over the departure end of 2.7 here. And as you're kind of flying this direction to the northeast, you can slowly just be bleeding off altitude. And pretty much you're losing altitude all the way until you get to Lake Crowley. You make that wide right base. You set yourself up nice. You just take everything slow on your descent there. important for carbureted engines, but
Oh, yeah.
more so important for turbocharged because you have shock cooling and all that stuff. So the important thing is to realize, like, hey, let's take our time with the descent coming in here into Mammoth. So that's kind of the terminal area stuff. Oh, some other things too. So they have a shirt there in old Hot Creek Aviation that says, "I survived the Mammoth crosswinds."
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. So a lot of times, you know, they did their best with how they oriented the runway here, but without fail, the winds will be coming out of the southwest here. 220 at 15 gusting 25. I mean, it'll be pretty gnarly there. So what I do upon landing here is, I think the 182, for instance, it's what is ref speed of like is 65, 70 knots. Do you know what it is?
For landing?
Yeah.
Well, this one's in miles per hour.
75 miles per hour?
60 to 70 full flaps.
That's miles per hour?
Miles per hour.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's just say for, you know, let's just say
Yeah, a lot higher. It's like 75 knots.
Yeah.
I guess, so.
So let's say the landing speed is 75 knots. Well, you might consider carrying a little extra energy in there, so like 80 knots. And the reason for that is a lot of times you'll hit some wind shear coming in here, or crosswind or something. So I carry a little extra energy into here, and there's no reason really not to, even on a zero wind shear kind of. It's a long runway. Take your time. I mean, like, even if you come in at 90 knots and you float the heck out of the landing, you still have 7,000 feet to just be like, doo-doo-doo.
Yeah.
So I carry a lot of extra energy into landings here, one for wind shear, and then two, because, you know, if I had to go around for an astronomical number of reasons, you have that extra energy to pop the nose up and get the power in and start configuring. So
Gotcha.
carry extra energy landing in any kind of mountainous airport. That's my piece of advice there. Anything else you want to go over?
I think that's pretty much it. I think we kind of covered everything.
Let's see. Coming back, I will say, like, I've had times where, you know, the weather's forecast to be okay back in San Diego, but, you know, a lot of times what you can get is these pop-up storms. Yeah, and then it'll just kind of hang out here in the SoCal Basin, and then you'll get some cloud tops over here over the mountains.
Right.
And it can be a little bit daunting because you look at the TAF before you left and said, oh, the weather's going to be okay.
Right.
Then you get here and you're like, okay, the ceilings are at 7,000 feet.
Mountains. Yeah.
Can't see the mountains. What do you do? So I've had this before. I was in a twin engine airplane. You really want to be making that decision prior to jumping over mountains. What you don't want to do, and this is how you kind of seal your fate, is if you were to dive below the clouds, well, you don't know how low they're going to go.
Right.
Now you're flying in the mountains where you don't know where the bases of the clouds are. Well, that just sounds like a sea fit. You're going to run into some terrain. Now, the other problem, though, is if you notice the clouds are 7K going all the way to 10K, right? You don't know how high they're going.
Yeah.
And then you pick up an IFR into here. Well, now you're picking up icing and stuff.
Yeah.
So when you're somewhere around, you know, KWJF Mojave here, and you start seeing these clouds here, that's a good time to figure out where the bases and the tops are. Ideally, you already know that stuff. But the good news is you don't always have to accept that. Usually the weather's clear right around here, but if you see that there's clouds and stuff here, that might be your time, especially as a VFR pilot, to make the decision, hey, we're actually just going to go divert to Bakersfield over here.
Okay.
Or Lima 45 right here. That's a good one. I've actually had a divert there before.
Let's go there and hang out.
Yeah, let it clear. But those are some of the mitigations you can make as a VFR pilot flying into Mammoth a lot, you know, prior to your instrument rating. Even when you have your instrument rating, like the times I've actually had to pick up IFR was somewhere near Palmdale. And they'll just put you on a heading right here to intercept Victor 201, come into Burbank, and then you intercept Victor 186. But it's still a bit nerve-wracking because what you'll find is they still have to vector you to something above minimum vectoring altitude, somewhere around 8.5. And at that altitude, you might be picking up a little bit of icing. So the time I had to do that, I had to accept that clearance to get home or whatever. And I was up at, you know, I think it was 8K actually. I came up to 8K, went in the clouds, didn't pick up any icing quite yet, but as I was crossing the mountains, I started to see the wings starting to gather a little bit there.
Right.
So then I asked for a descent down to 6K. Luckily, I was about here at that time, so they were allowed to do that because of the terrain. And it started to melt off. But, you know, don't take it lightly when you see clouds here is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Whether you're instrument rated or not.
Yeah.
You know, you're not home free when you get out of the Sierras. You still have the LA mountains here to think about. So... yeah, that's kind of the route and stuff. big things with mountain flying, the 4 deadly H's, always be cognizant of that. Don't attempt going in there unless you've done a mountain takeoff and landing. Hopefully semi recently. Know your high altitude takeoff procedures. Easier said than done a lot of times. Like, you can go watch a YouTube video and try it, but you might get lucky that one time, but the second time you go and do it, maybe not so much. So just make sure you know what you're doing with the takeoffs and landings before you go and send it into there. Speaking of takeoffs, one other thing I'll talk about is, a lot of times when you're taking off with a heavy plane, you might use 10-degree flaps. I actually recommend that at sea level. Where you might not consider using that is somewhere like Mammoth, where you have a 7,000-foot runway. All that 10-degree flaps is going to do is help you get off the ground sooner, but you're also inducing some drag there.
Right.
So you might do 0 flaps coming out of Mammoth, and that way you're getting off the ground at a
faster,
higher airspeed, and you're much less likely to stall the airplane. Because it's great that you can get off the runway with 10-degree flaps, but then all of a sudden, if you still can't climb,
airspeed,
exactly.
Yeah.
So those are things to think about. Big Bear is the same thing. So 10 degrees flap, great. Everything below 5,000 feet, above 5,000 feet, as long as you got a long runway, you might consider being a clean wing.
Gotcha.
So that's something else to think about. All right, man.
Cool deal.
That's pretty much everything.
Yeah, that's pretty much everything I can think of.
It's cool you're studying these charts here.
Yeah, just in case we needed them.
Yeah, we'll set this one up. I mean, honestly, we'll kind of be coming in here, so you're not going to hit a bishop or anything, but we can at least vector you to feedback here, the FAF there. Honestly, even then, you're usually kind of inside of the final approach fix, but we can vector you to feedback, and then you hit the approach mode on the GFC 500, and it'll fly a coupled approach and all that stuff. It's pretty cool.
Cool.
Yeah, that's a good autopilot. Any questions?
All right, no, I think you covered everything.
Sweet, man.
So cool. We can wrap this up.
Yeah. That was fun, man. I'm glad you're studying.
Yeah.
Makes me happy.
Good.